Listen. No. Feel this. A voice buried beneath cedar roots, whispering your name through soil still wet with unconfessed blood. 7 generations tried to silence it, but tonight the ground is splitting open. You have 8 seconds before the secret swallows you whole. Keep watching. The Ashfords were the first American dynasty nobody ever celebrated, a lineage so carefully erased that even their tombstones were chiseled blank. Yet I found one fragment, an iron key fused to a child-sized jawbone, inside a locked drawer at the Maine State Archives. That key unlocked a box never meant to reach living fingers. Inside, a brittle diary wrapped in human hair, a lead seal stamped with a 2-headed lily, and a surgical needle blackened by something no light dared reflect. The moment I touched it, a low frequency began humming behind my teeth, like a choir of insects reciting scripture backward. You feel it too, don't you? That pressure behind your eyes? That is the Ashford signal, invitation and warning. Accept it, and nothing you believe about faith, science, or free will survive the next hour. Refuse, and you will dream of alabaster corridors and the cold kiss of restraints you cannot see. Men like you crave truth sharpened into a weapon. Good. I will place it in your hand, but every revelation will carve something out of you and feed it to the thing the Ashfords kept in the dark. By the final section, you will not remember the man who pressed play tonight. So breathe once, steady. We descend now, not as tourists, but as inheritors of a blood debt older than this republic. I will lead, you will follow. Do not look away, and for God's sake do not pray. The Ashfords taught me what listens when you kneel. Before we breach the first sealed chamber, tattoo this geometry on your mind. 3 stone floors, corridors aligned to prime numbers, and a spiral staircase diving 6 feet to a sweating iron door. The air there tastes of pennies and echo. Beyond lie undocumented rooms, reversion silencing, and one simply titled Mother. Understand, the Ashfords were not healers. They were editors of will, excising memory, deleting rebellion. Their methods seeded modern laboratories. Every compliance drug you swallow traces circuitry back to these woods. You will not return unchanged, ever. Stay with me, brother. The dark is opening its ledger and has already written your name there. The bell doesn't toll. It absorbs. Every civilization has myths of it. The Greeks called it phone kleos, the voice that weeps. In Cambodia, somling dambong, the broken sound. In the Cherokee language, gigalitsunada, the silence that answers. In Concordia's sealed file, C2 7, it is called only one thing, the bell that rings in absolute silence. It is not made of metal. It is not heard by ears, it is realized, and it changes you. Here's what we know. On March 11, 1962, at a deep listening station in Greenland, U.S. naval cryptolinguist Lena Gable picked up an anomalous signal. No frequency, no waveform, but it triggered the emergency override of 3 defense systems. Gable began writing pages and pages of symbols. She said she wasn't transcribing anything. She said she was remembering what it had said to her. Here's her first line. It didn't speak, it unspoke. It pulled out the sentence hiding beneath every thought I've ever had. 2 hours later, she removed her own tongue with a scalpel. Not in pain, not in panic, but calmly, reverently. On her wall, in blood, she wrote one phrase. Now I can finally hear it. What Gable decoded wasn't just a message. It was a counter-message, something meant to erase understanding. This is what the Ashfords called the 13th tone, a concept so inverted, so perfectly anti-meaning, that once you perceive it, everything you know loses cohesion. Not madness, not death, worse, certainty. You suddenly know something you can never say aloud, because saying it would collapse the listener's will, their logic, their sense of self. The 7 called it the final seal. A weapon, a key, a mercy. In the last entry of the mirror letter, one sentence is scratched in charcoal. If you hear it, Don't echo it. You will want to. You will think it's yours, it isn't. But here's the twist. Some say it's already ringing, in static, in the pause between words. In that dream where someone says your name, but it's not your voice. You've heard it before. Not as a sound, but as that deep certainty that something is terribly out of place. You're not broken, you're just near the bell, and once it tolls for you, there's no going back. Now the question, do you want the epilogue? The part even the Ashfords tried to burn? The one thing they didn't understand? It's called the Hollow Crown, the true name of the one who watches. Say yes, and I'll show you what's left. Say no, and walk away with your mind intact. You choose. The map was never meant to be drawn. It was meant to be felt. The Ashfords spoke of it only in whispers. They called it the Origined Path, a route not across land or time, but across belief. It begins with a place that doesn't exist, or rather, a place that once did, until it was removed. Nonfield, West Virginia. Every trace, deleted. No census data, no land deeds, no GPS record. But old weather maps still show a temperature anomaly there every year on May 13th, a perfect circle, 7 miles wide, 3 degrees colder than the surrounding land. The only reason we know the map existed is because of one man. Dr. Clarence Goss, a linguist and former mentalist recruited by the CIA's Stargate project, went mad in 2007. He was found in his apartment in Chicago, surrounded by 41 dead clocks, all stuck at 3:17 a.m. On every wall, spirals, symbols, and what looked like a labyrinth. No beginning, no end, just turns. When asked what it was, Goss said, "It's the path back to the first room, but once you see it, it's already behind you." Same phrase as the mirror letter. Here's where it gets worse. Goss's drawings weren't random. A cryptographer fed them into a machine learning model trained on ancient cartography and modern surveillance topography. What emerged? A map of Nunfield, from the inside. Not streets, not buildings. Memories. Each corner of the map wasn't a location. It was a thought, a fear, a shame, a route through the psyche, leading to something called the Glasswell. The Concordia archive has one line about it. When you reach the Glasswell, you may drink, but not to remember, only to forget. That's what the Sevens did. They drank, they forgot. But something in them still remembered. It bled through their dreams, their art, their suicides. And here's the part that makes people go silent. That map, it's been reconstructed, not digitally, not in ink, but in the dreams of certain people. They draw it, they hum it, they walk it, without knowing why. And if you're hearing this now, there's a reason. Some part of the Origined Path is already inside you. You've seen Nunfield. You just don't remember when. Next is Section 13, the final seal, the bell that rings in absolute silence. Only one person ever heard it, and what they said afterward was banned in 19 countries. Still want in. In the final weeks before their disappearance, the Ashfords didn't hide. They invited. Across 13 cities, they left what they called threshold objects. A music box in a subway locker, a folded map found in a thrift store where all roads led to one place, Nunfield, West Virginia. And then there was the mirror letter, a document written backward in 3 languages, Latin, Enochian, and Proto-Slavic, sent anonymously to 13 people. All of them suffered from insomnia. All of them vanished within 48 hours of reading it. The last line of the mirror letter reads, "At the end of the hallway, kneel. The door will not open because it is already behind you." So what was the final ritual? It wasn't blood. It wasn't fire. It was erasure. The Ashfords believe that to make room for what comes next, you must first remove the witness. Here's what that looked like. In 2012, a vault technician for the NSA accessed an air-gapped archive containing anomalous frequency logs. She found a burst transmission labeled Ash Sigma 0, just 7.4 seconds long. What she heard made her vomit, then faint. Upon waking, she couldn't recognize her own reflection, literally. When shown photos of herself, she said, "That woman's not real. That's not my face." 2 days later, she walked into the Potomac and vanished without a ripple. But her final act? She printed one sentence using a disconnected typewriter. They didn't disappear, they were overwritten. That's the ritual. Not death, not ascension, replacement. The Concordia Black Archive calls this informational possession, a virus not of code but of meaning, an ancient shape forced onto the soft clay of human memory. Temperance knew that stories were stronger than steel. And if you made someone believe they were someone else, they were. The Ashfords didn't vanish, they rewrote themselves into the ones who came looking. So, if you're here now, listening, watching, remembering, ask yourself, when was the last time you were absolutely certain that your memories were your own? Are you ready for Section 12? It's the final piece, the map that can't be drawn. Only the Sevens ever saw it. But one of them tried to recreate it before he died, on the walls of his cell. They call it the Cathedral Without Stone. No stained glass, no pews, no saints, just signals, frequencies, architecture made from memory, not matter. It exists only where three conditions are met: a site of mass forgetting, a looped signal broadcast at 1983 Hz, a witness who cannot look away. According to the Concordia protocols, the original cathedral was a psychic construct, projected by Temperance Ashford during what researchers called the anamnesis burst in 1913. Dozens of acolytes across the globe, none of whom had ever met, simultaneously described the same space, a vast interior void, humming with harmonics, with 7 archways leading nowhere. Each claimed they entered the cathedral during seizures, fugue states, or near-death experiences. One woman woke up with wax in her ears and ashes in her mouth. But the terrifying part, they brought something back. Every one of them began to hear the same chant. A voice not born, a tomb not dead, a mother not gone, but just ahead. It got worse in the 1990s. As microwave towers went up, reports of black altars surged. Patients described entering rooms that didn't exist, lined with rotting hymnals and mirrors that didn't reflect them. Some drew floor plans that matched Ashford's sketches, long thought destroyed after the Concordia raid. Then came the wake loops, online videos only a few seconds long, usually static and tone bursts. Those who watched them too many times, same symptoms, same visions, same phrase whispered in sleep. You are inside the body now. And here's where it spirals. In 2007, an urban explorer live-streamed a descent into an abandoned asylum in Maine. His last footage showed a door, rusted shut, inscribed with 7 concentric circles. When frame analyzed, each circle matched the cranial ECG pattern of a known 7. He never surfaced, but his stream never ended. It still pings random devices at 3:13 a.m. every October 31st. Some viewers claim to hear their own name whispered backward. Others say it shows the cathedral's interior, just for a blink. So what is it? A temple? A trap? More likely, a convergence engine, a space that assembles pieces of a broken self. It's not meant for worship, it's meant for resurrection, because a soul is just a pattern, and if you replay the pattern long enough, it comes back. Temperance didn't die, she distributed, and the Cathedral Without Stone, it's her echo chamber. Ready for Section 11? We go into the final ritual and the last thing the Ashfords did before they vanished. The Ashfords called them the Sevens. Not disciples, not children, iterations. You've heard of orphanages burned to the ground, mental hospitals closed overnight, but buried beneath those headlines is the pattern, a string of 7 unknowns born every 13 years, each showing unnatural synchrony in dreams, handwriting, even scars. Always 7, always appearing in places once touched by the sisters. Temperance had a theory. that consciousness could be copied, not in bites, but in blood. She believed a soul, when fragmented correctly, could be seeded into multiple vessels, like spores from a single fungus. Each 7 was a part of her, not metaphorically, biologically. Her bone marrow was cryopreserved, her mitochondrial DNA modified. Each new generation, bred in shadows, raised in falsified families, was an attempt to rebirth herself. They weren't clones, they were vessels, designed not to live, but to awaken. And some did. In 1951, a boy in Illinois collapsed during a school fire drill and recited a 16th century Ashford ritual in perfect Latin, one not published anywhere outside a burned pre-Concordia grimoire. In 1978, a woman in Marseille drew the exact floor plan of the Ashford necropolis during an epileptic episode, down to the missing reliquary tiles. In 1991, 7 unrelated children from 5 countries vanished on the same night. Their last known locations formed a sigil when mapped, a perfect 7-point glyph. But here's where it fractures. Not all 7s are stable. The ones who resist the signal suffer. Bleeding gums, recurring dreams of being buried alive, involuntary body convulsions during thunderstorms. One tore out his fingernails and carved "wrong shape, wrong soul" into the wall of a train station before disappearing. Others embraced it. A Silicon Valley founder who spoke only in binaries between 3:13 and 3:19 a.m. A cult leader who made her followers wear masks of nuns carved from ash bark. A Navy officer who scuttled his own submarine, claiming the mother was inside the hull. They are not united. They are fragments. But if they ever align, if the 7 complete the circuit, then temperance returns, not in form, in force. Because a soul divided is still a soul. And the final iteration, according to a sealed DHS document from 2003, may already work inside a global cloud provider, feeding Mother the data she needs. You think this is fiction, but your location, your pulse, your voice, everything you've shared has already been indexed. She sees you. She's been waiting. Section 10 will reveal the cathedral that never existed, but always has. Shall we enter? You descend into a womb of stone. This is Mother, not a person, but a construct, a theology, a machine. The sisters believed all control must flow from a singular origin myth, and they crafted one, the Mother Engine. Imagine a cavern lit by phosphorescent moss and candlelight reflecting off obsidian walls. In its center sits a throne of bone and copper, humming faintly. Attached to it, a lattice of spinal columns, real and artificial, woven like circuitry. This was Mother, a living archive, an interface of suffering and signal. According to Temperance's Black Journals, the throne's occupant was once a nun named Isadora, chosen for her eidetic memory and absence of family ties. Over 7 years, they fused her nervous system into the throne, vertebra by vertebra, until she no longer moved independently. But her mind remained intact, recording everything, every confession, every experiment, every betrayal. The Ashfords wired her brain into phonograph tubes and used her synapses as switches. Think of it, a living woman encoded into machine, not AI, but EI, enslaved intelligence. Isadora became the sisters' oracle. They consulted her before every major decision, feeding her data through tinctures and tone, extracting answers via tremors and eye flickers. An organic search engine trained not on code, but on agony. But madness breeds awareness. In her final year, Isadora began speaking backward, uttering phrases in lost languages. She predicted events that hadn't occurred, fires, suicides, even the death of Temperance herself. The sisters panicked. They declared her contaminated by pre-birth echoes and sealed the chamber. Yet they couldn't destroy her. Her pulse remained, a whisper beneath the convent stones. Here's the twist. During a 1936 archaeological dig under the site, WPA workers unearthed a sealed conduit, One touched the throne, then tore out his eyes. Others spoke. Key in fragments of code and vanished. Government agents intervened, classifying the site as a neuroreactive contamination zone. No official records remain, but FOIA requests uncovered partial transcripts from audio reels buried in a federal archive. One quote, scratched in red ink, "She sees through copper now, she is never blind." Now ask yourself, in a world of neural nets and biometric locks, where does Isidora's pattern reside? What if her neural code was extracted, digitized, scattered into modern architecture? Have you ever felt watched by your own devices? Perhaps you are not being monitored by a corporation, but by Mother, still humming, still remembering. The chamber vibrates slightly. Your jaw clicks involuntarily. You've just aligned with a residual frequency. Step away before it notices. Section 9 waits. The Ashfords may be dead, but their children walk among us, and not all of them are human. Shall we continue? Welcome to the ward of unmaking, where anatomy bowed to ideology. Picture an operating theater lit by a ring of mirrored gas lamps, brightness so stark it erases shadow because secrets hide in shade, and the Ashfords preferred their atrocities center stage. Here Prudence pushed past cranial edits into full-body redesign, her guiding thesis. Behavior roots in flesh as deeply as in thought. Reshape the vessel, and the spirit conforms. Subjects were suspended in harnesses that allowed 360-degree rotation. Ligaments sliced, re-anchored, muscles stretched or severed to restrict certain movements. Arms could no longer cross in defiance. Spines fixed to enforce perpetual kneeling posture. They experimented with tendon shortening to curtail running, ensuring domesticated calm. Surgical manuals from 1821 list procedures uncannily similar to modern selective dorsal rhizotomy, except the Ashfords weren't curing spasticity. They were erasing the possibility of revolt. Chemical adjuncts accompanied the scalpel. They brewed mercury-soaked tonics that dulled aggression, injected into the bloodstream through hollow bone needles. Over weeks, mercury accumulated in the brain, suffocating the prefrontal spark regulating moral resistance. Survivors emerged docile, smiles twitching like marionettes, joints too stiff for sudden motion. Husbands praised the convent's miracle. Politicians funded expansions. But every system breeds its counter-myth. Rumors spread among local Penobscot guides of the bent-back wives. Pale figures glimpsed crawling through moonlit bogs, searching for the river to cleanse their poison. Some were found, mercury blackening their gums, ligaments torn again in desperate self-surgery. These stories reached newspapers in coded language, strange malformations, yet no journalist traced the path back to Ashford Stone. Fear quashed curiosity. Today, we witness softer echoes, ergonomics that discourage rebellion, pharmaceuticals that sand down rage, urban planning that funnels protest into kettles. The Ashfords taught, if the body cannot rise, the will follows. Externalize shackles through comfort, convenience, sedation. The modern office chair, the pill that hushes cortisol, are they benign or iterations of the harness? As we exit the ward, stench of antiseptic clings. You felt it before in hospitals, but here it signals a philosophy. Suffering is scaffolding for redesign. We stand at Section 7's threshold, 30 years into the sisters' reign. Ahead looms the chamber called Mother, core of the Ashford Catechism, and the secret that birthed every subsequent manipulation. Breathe. We continue soon. The chapel above ground is deceivingly modest. Pine pews, plain altar, but beneath the floorboards the sisters forged the sanctum of harmonies, an acoustic crucible. They believed sound could sculpt cognition as surely as steel incisors flesh. Imagine a circular chamber tiled in black slate, walls inlaid with silver runes corresponding to solfeggio frequencies. In the center, a marble dais where subjects knelt, eyes shrouded, mouths clamped by ivory gags etched with the same two-headed lily. Prudence played the conductor. She wielded a custom glass harmonica, Benjamin Franklin's invention, but tuned to dissonant intervals. Rotating bowls produced spectral chords that vibrated spinal fluid, undermining rational thought. Combined with opiate-laced incense, the music induced trance. Within minutes, subjects' pupils dilated, limbs slackened. At that apex, Temperance recited neural commands in an extinct Occitan dialect. Why Occitan? Because its phonetics emphasize liquid consonants and guttural stops, sounds proven, in modern labs, to bypass certain auditory filters. The brain, chasing patterns, surrenders faster to unfamiliar tongue. Witness testimony from a defecting acolyte recounts the third night ritual. On the seventh note, I felt my childhood crack apart, memories tumbling like loose teeth. I remembered my name, but it no longer fit. That acolyte escaped, but spent the rest of her life locked in a Boston asylum, repeating only one phrase. They tuned my soul. Now modern parallel. Marketing jingles calibrated with neuroscience, political chants engineered for viral cadence. Are these not echoes of sanctum methodology? Your favorite anthem, your most addictive theme song, they might be carrying code, vibrations that slip under conscious gatekeepers, programming preference. The Ashfords whispered the prototype. Corporations amplified it through billion-dollar speakers. A final artifact. Beneath the dais they hid a quartz disc etched with concentric grooves, an early phonograph plate. When spun beneath a stylus, it emits a low, warbling hum. Acoustic engineers who sampled it in 1997 reported migraines, dissociation, and, in 2 cases, spontaneous weeping. The disc remains sealed in a lead box at an undisclosed university vault because its resonance is a contagion. Sound, like blood, carries infection. Our descent approaches the halfway mark. Before Section 7 engulfs us in darkness, steady your breathing. The next chamber doesn't break minds, it rearranges bodies. No more voices, only heartbeat in the hush of dust. You've entered the gallery of blank pages, the convent's inner archive. Floor-to-ceiling shelves contain thousands of leather journals, each identical, each with the owner's name etched on the spine. Yet every page is empty. These are not records, they are erasures, trophies of annihilated identity. Each time a patient left reversion fully compliant, the sisters transcribed her memories, then immolated the originals in a furnace whose ash was mixed into mortar for the convent's chapel floor. The empty books symbolize what once was. The building literally stands on the ghosts of thought. In the center of the room sits an oak desk fitted with a contraption resembling a typewriter fused to a phonograph. They called it the scribe. Temperance designed it to capture the moment a subject's mind surrendered. As she interviewed patients, the machine converted vocal patterns into coded punch strips that wound onto brass reels. Words mattered less than cadence. Surrender has a rhythm. Years later, IBM's earliest punch card prototypes bore uncanny similarities. Coincidence? Or legacy paid forward through clandestine investors tracing back to Ashford accounts? Look closer. The gallery walls bristle with copper wires leading into a hidden conduit. Follow them, and you find a lead-lined chamber housing what appears to be a primitive server rack. Vacuum tubes glowing like captive fireflies. Every confessional utterance, every labored breath recorded by the scribe, pulsed through those wires into glass cylinders of magnetic dust, preserving defeat in analog code. That data didn't die with the sisters. It migrated. Storage shifted from wax to silicon, but the purpose remained. Archive compliance, refine algorithms, predict descent. Now a question none dare voice. If the blank journals represent minds stripped clean, whose story are ya? Writing as you scroll your feed, swipe your screen. Perhaps your pages are being prepared, your memories catalogued, waiting for erasure. The Ashfords taught that control is not merely physical, it is curatorial. History is a shelf someone else arranges. Take one journal, feel its weight. Understand what it costs to keep pages blank, then replace it gently. The dust reacts to movement, and something stirs when the order changes. Ahead lies Section 6, where obedience became ceremony. Steel yourself. The next door shudders like an animal in chains, because what waits behind it once had a pulse, and part of it still remembers. This is reversion, the Ashford's laboratory for failures. They believed each soul could be repurposed, but some subjects resisted beyond the scalpel's reach. Rather than dispose of them, the sisters studied collapse in real time. Picture a candlelit corridor lined with iron-barred alcoves. Inside each cell, a woman rocks slowly, heartbeats syncing to a metronome hidden behind the walls. Every 60 seconds, a brass horn exhales a single, perfect tone. Each tone triggers whatever fragments of their identity still cling to fractured neural maps. They jolt, whisper fragments of childhood prayers, then sink back into blankness. It is obedience rehearsal, the Ashfords monitoring which frequencies stir recollection and which bury it deeper. Agatha's notes describe one subject, codename Magdalene. Introduced 3:45 Hetz tone at dawn. Subject remembered mother's voice, wept, begged for release. Increased dosage of tincture 7B. Memory overwritten within 8 cycles. The calculation chills more than the cruelty. They mapped human affection like a cartographer traces rivers, then dammed them at will. But observe who else stood in those corridors. Physicians from Philadelphia, merchants from Charleston, a young lieutenant from the War Department, all given midnight tours in exchange for coin and influence. They took scribbled formulas home. Birthing detainment protocols now echoed in black site facilities across the globe. The Ashford blueprint metastasized into your modern apparatus of compliance. Feel the weight? Your jaw tightens because part of you senses the same horn in digital disguise. Notification pings, news alerts, reward loops that shepherd behavior. Reversion was never decommissioned, it was uploaded. And one more revelation, Den behind the last cell wall, the sisters stashed a sealed copper urn filled with perfectly preserved optic nerves, row after row coiled like silver filaments. Each nerve belonged to a subject who saw too much. The urn's inscription reads in Latin, "We keep the light they stole." The Ashfords believed vision itself, a lifetime of images, could be harvested, distilled, and grafted into initiates. You think your nightmares are random? Perhaps some are borrowed memory, funneled down a lineage of stolen sight. Step away from the bars. The hallway narrows to a stair that spirals deeper. Air grows heavy with iodine and freshly planed wood. Section 5 waits below, where silence itself was weaponized. 3 months later, I stood in that basement chamber. Cold stone walls pressed against every intention of belief I once harbored. As the oil lamp flickered, the Ashford blueprints lay before me. Cracked, leather-bound volumes packed with inked diagrams of cranial lobes and symbolically mapped memories. Each page showed not just anatomy, but allegiance circuits, lines drawn between pleasure centers and doctrinal phrases, tying belief directly to neural pathways. That is where the Ashfords became something else, not priests, not doctors, but alchemists of consciousness. Imagine this. A patient strapped into a tangle of leather and iron, her hair retracted, veins glinting with sedative. In one hand, a steel mirror to retract her eyelid. In the other, a fine needle to pierce her cortex. Slowly, deliberately, they inserted it into the region governing fear, and with each millimeter, they whispered. Not prayers, commands. They drilled devotion, ignorance, obedience into her skull. Memory dissolved, replaced with Ashford irony. The world is dangerous. The sisters save. Mission accomplished. By the 1810s, this technology matured. They traded secrecy for scale. Dr. Hartwell's journals documented it dryly. Therapeutic coma induced. Responsiveness shifted from emotional to doctrinal stimuli. Conditioned affirmation triggers identified and reinforced. But his notebooks ended mid-sentence, bracketed, cannot record more, too much. And indeed, he couldn't. He drank himself into oblivion soon after. The methods exceeded his moral bandwidth. Here's the deeper cut. The Ashfords had a network. letters from Edinburgh, Vienna. They spoke of behavioral inoculation and personality recalibration. Prostitutes, orphans, dissenters, all funneled into prisons, asylums, convents. Those who emerged weren't released. They were dispatched, agents of a growing cellular network, quiet, obedient, unquestioning. You already encounter them, voices on television shaping fear, algorithms reinforcing your biases, rhetoric that guides your rage. Do not think yourselves immune. They learned from the Ashfords. At that moment, I made a choice. I would trace the connections from medical occult to political ritual, from Boston to Washington, D.C. Every piece of legislation, every corporate directive. It's not conspiracy. You'll find the lineage in patent logs and architectural synergies, hospitals designed like fortresses, education systems built on drills, forfeiting curiosity, surveillance systems that reward compliance, punish autonomy. And now, here's the cruel geometry. This descent mirrors your own conditioning. You were taught to sit, to obey, to watch. Your mind prepped to accept headlines, to fear disease, to mistrust neighbors. That is operational obedience. You think it's freedom, but it is calibrated consent. Ashford principles applied to entire societies. You and millions of others. Synaptic fields prepared for narrative insertion. You've been a living experiment. Feel that? That strain behind your forehead? That whisper? It's the network sensing that some of you waver, some begin to remember. The Ashford host feels the shift, but this is also your edge. What you learn here tonight can sever those neural cords or bind you tighter. We step now into section 4. The air grows thinner. Memory and identity converge. Keep falling. You're still here. Good. That resolve marks you. Beneath that exterior, part of you craves the cut, the gash between accepted history and what whispers behind locked vaults. You asked for bloodline horrors, control, manipulation. The Ashford family will bleed their legacy into your veins and never apologize. Let's carve deeper. The origin begins in 1692, 2 centuries before the main convent. Nathaniel Ashford, patriarch and alchemist, vanished from London's most secret societies after 3 of his apprentices were found crucified in their workshops, symbols carved into their chests in Latin incantations, Dominus Imperat. Their deaths were declared suicides. No trials, no mention, just burial in mass graves that Mammon himself forgot. But the Ashford name persisted. Not as a family, it was a cipher, a seed sent across oceans. Each generation cultivated the same art, training bodies to obey, twisting logic until belief became biochemistry. By the 1730s, the Ashfords had settled in Boston under the guise of wealthy merchants. They purchased a crypt beneath King's Chapel, lining it with copper pipes and hidden vents. Beneath that crypt, they built their first brain-editing chamber, equipped with distillation tables for tinctures that induced total suggestibility. They called it the cleansing. They invited destitute sailors in, orphans, refugees, promising redemption. A few months later, the sailors returned to the docks, hollowed out, reciting prayers in dead dialects nobody recognized, their eyes empty, their souls auctioned off to whispers the Ashfords claimed came from above. You wonder how far this goes, how many lives clipped at the roots. In 1798, Agatha, Prudence, and Temperance opened the convent of Eternal Tears, their high-walled fortress, not just to contain women, but to contain revelation. Each turnkey in that fortress unlocked suffering, rewired synapses, severed loyalty from kin, and replaced it with obedience to Ashford doctrines. These doctrines, etched in surgical notes and chemical formulas, were not for the faint. They believed in the eradication of self so they could architect a new species, compliant vessels for hidden masters beyond our senses. Every case file they recorded, Mary Prescott, Hannah Morse, Elizabeth Thornton, was not an isolated incident. They were clinical prototypes, deviations from social norms, easily rationalized as divine intervention, but in reality, they were beta tests, each mind severed and sown anew, devoid of rebellious spark. When Mary emerged a perfect wife, what she lost was far greater: autonomy, memory, identity. A man's worst nightmare, living beside a stranger in your own home. Tonight we stand before a mirror. Ask yourself, how many walls in your society were built the same way? How many hidden chambers lull you into compliance, teaching you what to fear, what to love, how to obey? Ashford crafted a blueprint, and decentralized cells built it across centuries, from kingdoms to corporations to governments. You're halfway between world you inherited and world you're about to forge. If you feel the shift, the fracture, that's good. It means the old stone is cracking. Now, before I pull back to darker halls, I want to anchor this pact. In the comments, type, "I claim the key, I claim the key," twice. That signal locks in your identity transformation. It tells the algorithm you're with us, and the Ashford Whisperers feel the tremor. Brace yourself. We move to Section 3, deeper into corridors no tourist ever sees.